SELMA has been reporting to the ITR for some time now, but we're making this functionality available for all SELMA users that may need it now or in the future. The ITR is the Industry Training Register, and if you're consuming funds from the Industry Training Fund, you will likely have to report to this ITR functionality. If you have the ITR enabled in SELMA, you will see it under Reporting and ITR. The ITR is a fully integrated and live reporting technology. Whenever you create a program for the ITR, validate students, enroll students, update their enrollments, or enter pastoral care notes, messages will be automatically sent to the Industry Training Register. This page here shows the overview of messages being sent and if you may have messages that contain errors that need fixing. You can dig into these messages and see what was actually sent to the ITR. Of course, this is a not so convenient and not so readable XML format, which the ITR expects us to send. On the other side, you will also see if the message was received and if there's any errors. There's more material available to train you on how to use the ITR in SELMA. Please contact our support team if you need to be trained on ITR functionality. SELMA has now the functionality to manage more than one provider or school in the same SELMA instance. This is not by default enabled, but if you're managing more than one school, you may want to contact support to get this functionality. If you have this enabled under Settings and Providers, you will now see that there's more than one education provider set up. In this instance here, we have SetData and SELMA set up, both as two different schools. The most important thing is that when you create programs or update programs, you will see that each program has an owning school. This will ultimately drive the reporting functionality out of SELMA. For example, if you go and create an SDR or a set of SDR files, besides choosing the dates and the extraction method, you will also be able to choose the school for which you will want to create the SDR files. It is important to understand that you can manage multiple schools. However, user access to SELMA is not managed on school level. This means if you log into SELMA as a registrar, you will still be able to see every student of every school in the system. It literally helps you to create school-specific reports, such as the SDR, ITR, and security exports, and the EPI management report. Intake cascading is a new powerful function in SELMA that is available to all SELMA users from the release date. Intake cascading means changes that are made in an intake can be propagated and pushed through to the underlying enrollments. I'm going to show you the various areas of an intake where this is or can happen. To start with, I'm going to go ahead and change the start date of our intake. In this situation, I want to move the start date by 1 day because we had a disruption. I'm going to go ahead and update. The system will, as usual, ask me if I want to update the underlying components as well. I'm going to select the ones that are before the start date, so they have the updated start date as well. And now it allows me to propagate these changes to selected enrollments. I'm going to go ahead and click this button. It will show me a page of all the enrollments in this particular intake. By default, all active enrollments are selected for this propagation, for this update, but the withdrawn enrollment here on top is not selected. I can or cannot select this. This is entirely your preference. When I hit the update button, it will say this is now going to happen to all the underlying enrollments. They will have a new start date of the 7th of September. I'm going to go ahead and update this, and SELMA will process this update in the background. Similar functionality is in the components. First of all, I'm going to go ahead and ad hoc a component. I'm going to select the component that I want to add to this particular intake. It will, as usual, ask me if I want to do this in the intake only, or I can now go ahead and update underlying enrollments. Here we go. I can go ahead and select all enrollments in my intake that I want this component to be ad hoc on. I'm not going to select the one that is early withdrawn. Next step is I'm going to go and ad hoc this component. This will now be done in the intake as well as all the underlying enrollments that I've selected. The next one is deleting a component. Exactly the same is happening. I want to delete it from the intake as well as selected enrollments. I'm going to go ahead, delete. Once again, the screen is showing me all enrollments that I can remove this from or not. Perhaps the most powerful and new function is to go ahead and make a change on an individual component. For example, I'm going to change the unit standard on this particular component. Perhaps you want to teach an older version or a newer version. Or the version has changed whilst the students have been enrolled. I'm going to change the EFT slightly, and I'm also going to add a tuition fee. I'm going to update this component, and once again it will ask me if I want to propagate these changes to the underlying enrollments. I'm going to go ahead and select the enrollments. My withdrawn enrollment is by default not selected, but I can also adjust that one. I go ahead and update, and these changes in the component will now be pushed through to all underlying enrollments. Last but not least, on the Student tab, we have a new function to go ahead under Student Actions and bulk update the status. For example, if I want to change the status of all my students to be back to provisional, I can do this on this screen. Once again, it will ask me to confirm, and I go ahead and update all these components, students' enrollments to be back to provisional enrollments. An exciting new feature of SELMA is that we now have a student portal. What this means is that your students can log into SELMA and see their own records, as well as their achievements, transcripts, and course material. I'm now on the portal login page. This is the page your students will see, and I'm going to log in as a student that is in SELMA. 2FA is enabled. I'm going to enter my verification code and log in. The first page that you see on the student portal is the students' general details. They see their own picture and they can edit some of their information. How much information they can edit can be configured in SELMA itself. For example, they could update their mobile and home phone number. What they can also do is add or update their addresses themselves. On the second page, they see their training plans. This particular user has 2 certificate in automotive engineering enrollments. One is withdrawn and we've got a confirmed one. They can click on the details and see what components they are enrolled into and how far they've processed and progressed through the enrollment. They can also go ahead and view the course materials. You can set up as many pieces of course material as you want and make them enabled for download within the portal for your students. You can generate these links from your OneDrive location, for example, or any other online storage, and add these links to the program. The other thing the students can do is they can generate their own transcripts. With this button, they will be able to get to the transcript that you can usually generate as a PDF from your SELMA instance. The branding and look of the transcript will be exactly the same. Last but not least, the students can also contact you directly through the portal. If they have a question, they can send this through to you directly to your pastoral care email address that you set up in SELMA as well. I'm going to log out here, and please watch the next session to see how you can administer students that access the portal as well as stakeholders within the SELMA main module. Very similar to the student portal, there is also a portal for stakeholders. If you have linked stakeholders to your students, for example their employer or manager, they can access SELMA and see all the students that are linked to them to see their students' progress, as well as being able to download their basic attendance, progress reports, as well as diplomas. The login is exactly the same page like the student portal, but if you are a stakeholder, you will be forwarded to a slightly different portal. On the main screen of the portal, on the dashboard, you will see your total enrollments, your students, as well as the average progress of all your students. The stakeholder can then go to the student enrollments and see how many enrollments are actually linked to him or her. I can see here I have 3 different students with multiple different enrollments of different statuses. The stakeholder can open one of these students and just see the details of the students, what the student is up to, as well as the detailed components of the enrollments and how they're progressing through these components. Back on the enrollments, they can also see the progress next to multiple actions. From here, the stakeholders can print attendance reports, progress transcripts, as well as the diploma if in fact the status of the student's enrollment is finished and completed. These can obviously be printed, so this could be an option for the stakeholder to print a diploma for the student locally in their business. Everything else is pretty much the same as in the student portal. The user can go ahead, reset their password, log out, as well as actually looking at their own record. Slightly different here is when they look at their own record, they see obviously their own details, but they also see who they're linked to in terms of organizations in your business. Just one more reminder, the Stakeholder and Student Portal is an add-on to SELMA, and please go ahead and speak to support at selma.co.nz if you wish to make use of the Student and Stakeholder Portal. After you've seen how the Student Portal and the Stakeholder Portal looks, and what the students and stakeholders can actually do in the portal, it's important to explain as well how you manage the access and in fact your stakeholders and students that can access the portal. The first thing I'm going to show you is how to create a student portal user, and there's a couple of ways to do so. I'm going to open up a student record and go into edit mode. And I'm going to make sure that the student has, in fact, an email address and that they might have stakeholders. Now, this depends on whether you want to allow stakeholders to manage that student, and you will see this later on in the video. To make Pattern a student portal user, under student action, there is a make portal user function. It is as simple as that. You can click on it, and the student will be created in the portal and will get an email. You can see from the message that just appeared, the student is in fact already a portal user, and therefore no action has happened. The next way of making a student a portal user is on the fly whilst you enroll them. This is the most typical way of doing so. You enroll a student and you simply select the option to give this student access to the portal upon enrollment. What this does is this will make the student a portal user. At the enrollment event, they will get an email with the login credentials and the URL to log into the portal. The same thing is true when you map the stakeholders to the students. So the stakeholders that have access to the portal will straight away see the student's enrollment in the portal as well. The next thing is the contacts themselves. I'm going to go into settings contacts, and I'm going to find one of my stakeholders, Lebby. There's now a portal tab, and if you want to give Lebby access to the portal, you can simply make her a portal user by clicking the button and confirm this. Lebby will now get an email that she is a portal user, and she can go ahead and access the portal and the students that are linked to her. You can also go ahead and link enrollments to Lebby from here. You can find the enrollments and select them and link them to Levy. Now all this can also be done in bulk, and the students and stakeholders can be managed. For this, you go into the Settings Portal User section, and you will see a list of stakeholders and students that have in fact access to the portal. You can see here on the roles who is a student and who is a stakeholder, and you can of course also search this table for a specific user that you may want to manage. When clicking on the user, you can, for example, reset their password if they forgot it. Of course, they also have the option to reset the password themselves, but that's just an added functionality in case you need to help them. From here, there's a few more things you can do. First of all, you can create more users in bulk. Click on this option. The first thing you will select is whether you're creating students or stakeholders. So I'm selecting students here. I'm going to go ahead and search students in the system that are not already portal users. And I can select one or many of them, and they will be added to the confirmed selection list below, and you can go ahead and create the users. Once again, it's important that when you click that button, it will actually email these users about their new portal login and how they can access it. If you search for a student and the search returns students that do not have an email address, the system will warn you about that. You won't be able to create them, and you have a link directly to the student to add an email address and fix this issue and add them as student portal users. I'm going to quote and create a stakeholder this time. Selecting stakeholders. I'm going to search a table. Exactly like with the students, you can select as many stakeholders as you want and create them as stakeholder portal users as long as they have an email address, and go ahead and click the button and create these users. The next functionality in here is bulk mapping. This is critical for stakeholders. I'm going to select the stakeholder that is already a portal user, and the system will suggest you a list of enrollments that you may want to link to this particular stakeholder. Every enrollment that I link will automatically appear on the stakeholder portal for this particular stakeholder, and they can see their enrollment and their progress. Once you have confirmed your selection, you can go ahead and create this mapping. The same happens when you enroll a student and you select the option to map them to the stakeholder portal straight away. The last option on this page is simply to go to the portal. This is your specific link to your student and stakeholder portal that you may want to open from here, or you may want to give the link to your stakeholders or students if they've forgotten about how to access the portal. This is pretty much how you manage the stakeholder and student portal users in SELMA. If you've been using SELMA, you might have been using a Power BI EPI report. SELMA has now developed a report that is fully integrated within the software that shows you your New Zealand educational performance indicators as they're measured by TEC. To find this report, go to Reporting, EPI SDR Report, and open this. The report will show you all performance indicators that TEC is measuring you on, for example, course completion rate or total EFTS that you're consuming. This report comes with all the specific performance filter that TEC might ask you to deliver figures on, for example, whether your students are Pacifica or not, or a combination of Maori Pacifica. The report is grouped into SDR years, and if I change the SDR year, for example 2020 year, the report will fully reload the dataset for 2020. You can see here we've got more students as an example and more EFTs consumed. The course completion rate and qual completion rate, as well as your EFTs, are fully dynamic with the filters that are available in here. So for example, if you want to know how many EFTs your over 25-year-olds consume, you can use these filters by simply clicking into the pie charts. You have more filters on the side, even beyond filters that TC is interested in. For example, you can actually look at the performance of a specific intake in SELMA. Important is that the raw data behind this graphical report is also available under Grid Reports and SDR Data Detail Report. Here you can choose the SDR year and download the entire raw data for this report if you want to do detailed analysis on, for example, who still needs to complete. There's another few improvements which I quickly want to talk into. On this screen, on the student index, you will see that we have a little search and clear button now. If you are searching for a specific student, you will now have to confirm that search with the enter key or the search button on the user interface itself. This is done so that processing of particularly large data sets in a database is going to work faster. By default, we will also show less students on this screen, once again, just to make the user experience more fast and quick. The same is true for the enrollment index. Another thing that we've changed is when you create an intake or manage intakes, you will now be able to choose a start time and end time. There is relevance for this if you run day events. For example, your course starts at 9 in the morning, but everything is done in one day and they're finishing at 4 o'clock. These start and end time fields are also available as mail merge fields to add into your communication. For example, if you send out instructions on how they find you and when they should show up at a specific location. The next thing that has changed slightly is the enrollment screen. As explained before, you have buttons to enable the student portal if you actually subscribe to the student portal, but also at the bottom of the enrollment screen you will see new search functionality. You can now filter your list of students to enroll by date of birth, NSN number, student ID, first name, last name, or most importantly by intake interested in and program interested in. These options, intake interested in and program interested in, may be selected on your student record. This is when you slowly move students through the processes of being ready to enroll, or if the students have used a SELMA online enrollment form and have shown interest in a specific intake or a program. Here you will be able to select this program and filter very quickly everybody that is interested in and enroll them in bulk. This is it from the SELMA update. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and we hope that we'll see you very soon with the next update.